Okay, degrees are not the only units that we can use to measure an angle. Just like if I'm measuring the length of something, I could measure the length of that object in inches. I could measure the length in centimeters. I could measure the length in yards or miles. There are lots of different units for length. There aren't that many units for angles. Okay, we've either got degrees or we have what we call a radian. So here's the relationship that exists. Just like there are 360 degrees in every single circle, doesn't matter the size of the circle, how big the radius is or anything like that, all of them have 360 degrees. There are 2 pi radians in every circle. So radian measure, where it comes from is it's related to the arc length. Okay, it's related to the arc length. That's where the idea of radians came from. So that's why it's in terms of pi. Okay, radians, 95% of the time have a pi in the number. So to convert degrees into radians, since there are 2 pi radians in 360 degrees, can we reduce that ratio? I'm sorry. Can we reduce that ratio? Yes, 2 over 360, we can reduce that to pi over 180. So to convert degrees to radians, we are going to multiply the degree angle by pi over 180. Now, you do not have to write the word radian as the unit. The assumption is if you're giving an angle measure and you don't have a degree symbol, it's assumed that you're talking about radians. Okay, so from this point forward, I'm going to get really picky when you're giving me an angle measure. If you mean for it to be degrees, you've got to have the degree symbol. Okay, if it is degrees, you have to put a degree symbol. If you do not put a degree symbol, I'm going to assume that you're talking about radians. And 60 degrees is not the same as 60 radians. 60 degrees is not the same as 60 radians. They're that's a very different angle. So you have to have the degree symbol if you're talking about a measure in degrees. One way to remember this, if y'all have had chemistry or physical science and you've done any converting, remember when you convert something, you put what you want to get rid of on the bottom, kind of like I did over here in our ACT question. Okay, I was trying to turn hours into minutes. I want minutes, so minutes goes on top. I have hours, I want to get rid of it, so 1 hour was on the bottom. Same thing here. We're starting with degrees. We want radians. Radians are in terms of pi, so pi is on the top. Or another way of looking at it is we have degrees, we want to get rid of degrees. So our degrees, 180 degrees, goes on the bottom. Okay, so it is simple as multiplying by pi over 180. But here's the deal. When you put it into your calculator, you don't put the pi in there. Because if you put pi in there, it's going to give you a decimal value that it will not convert back into a fraction. Okay, so let's look at an example. 115 degrees. We want to convert that to its radian measure. So I'm going to multiply by pi over 180. So that's equal to 115 degrees pi over 180 pi. I want to reduce that, but again, do not type in the pi. Just put the 115 over 180. 95% of the time, it's always going to be a fraction, so you might as well go ahead and do math, enter. And that gives you your answer, 23 pi over 36. Okay, so 115 degrees is equivalent to 23 pi over 36 radians. Now, we're not going to get into what does it mean to be a negative angle, but I do want you to know that there is such a thing as a negative angle. Okay, it's not really negative measure, it just has to do with direction. but you just need to be used to it. It doesn't change how you convert it to radians. You still convert it to radians the same way. You just have a negative in it. So negative 85 over 180, it's going to be a fraction. So math enter, negative 17 pi over 36. Now, they're not always over 36. Those were just because of the way it reduces with the 180, because it ended in a 5. So let's look at one that doesn't end in a 5. And it is possible, again, we're not going to get into why, you'll learn that in pre-calc, but it is possible to have degrees that are greater than 360. It has to do with multiple rotations. But again, it doesn't change how you convert. You still do it the same way. Put your number over 180, reduce the fraction. So that is 5 pi over 2. So finally didn't have a denominator of 36. 5 pi over 2 is the radian equivalent of 450 degrees. Okay? Any questions? Simple thing, you just have to remember.